All right, welcome back to the War Room. I'm here with Bert and Alec, bringing Alec for the first time on the college football podcast here, the stick and ball sports side of this show, if you will. If you guys watch any of the motorsports content we've been putting out over the last couple of months, you know him, you love him. He's the man who works his tail off during the week and is a weekend warrior on a dirt bike. Alec, how we doing today, brother?
Good, man. No complaints from this end.
Awesome. And Bert, obviously repping some different colors. Well, not different colors, just a different brand.
Do I need to show? Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm not going to give too much context until after what's coming next. And I will say this: we value being truthful on this network, and
what? I don't know about that.
Approaching this very
I'll let
fraternity approach to sports journalism with integrity, and we just value authenticity, and this is supposed
to be my opening statement, not your opening statement.
I know. I'm sorry. This is just exactly what true journalism is, and it's a lost art. So without further ado, Bert, I know you got something. You have an opening statement to give to the people. So without further ado, please take it away.
Yeah, here we go. Howdy. Before I begin my opening statement, I would like to open with a song. Okay, that's interesting. Thought we were going to do that originally on the bet, but okay. Goodbye to Texas University. I'm not singing it. So long to the orange and white. Good luck to dear old Texas Aggies. They are the boys that show the real old fight. The eyes of Texas are upon you. That is the song they sing so well. Sounds like hell. So goodbye to Texas University. We're going to beat you all. Chigga chigga room. What the? Well, that's an interesting
I knew
word.
you were going to butcher that part.
Chigga chigga room, whatever. Rough, tough, real stuff. Texas A&M. Okay. Now that I have properly set the stage here, I would like to make the public aware of some recent changes in my heart. While both my school, Mississippi State University, and Texas A&M wear maroon, after witnessing our battle in Starkville 2 weeks ago, I have come to the conclusion that only one school is worthy of wearing the Lord's color, and that would be Texas A&M. Furthermore, I would like to inform the public as to why this podcast was delayed by 2 weeks. My heart is still recovering from witnessing Lavon Moss run through my team's piss-poor defense. He didn't play against State. This makes no sense. Okay, all right, whatever. Like LSU fans run through excuses as to why they gave up 31 points in that half. We'll talk about that later. The only solution for me, to recover was to convert to being a red-ass fighting Texas Aggie for this podcast. Gig 'em. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Thumbs up. Wasn't supposed to do that. Just read it. I need to take some time here to give – this is a really long opening statement. I needed to take some time here to give open advice to Mississippi State's uniform managers. Going forward, I would think Mississippi State's offensive line should wear brown pants next time they play Texas A&M, as that would have done much better job covering up the natural reaction we saw from when they had to line up against Nick Scorton and the Wrecking Crew defense. I thought the Wrecking Crew was done in like the 80s, but okay. I want to make the public aware that Texas A&M's success is not merely due to having, as Cole says, that oil money. Debatable. After witnessing the abuse of my defensive line, and my quarterback pissing his pants like Taylor Swift, he's a freshman, like Taylor Swift fans do at her concerts, I have finally come to the conclusion that their recent success is due to the beautiful bald head and sexy round body of Mike Elko. Wow. Lord, oh Lord, do I wish to achieve the peak male physique of that man. Gosh. Y'all pay way too much attention to that, man. Okay. I have now put up a motivational poster of Mike Elko in the. Oh, woo! Woo!
Where'd you put it up?
Above my front door, so I can leave every day with the reminder of what it looks like to be a real man. I want to make everyone aware. Gosh, this thing never stops. I want to make everyone aware that Mike Elko is the man, and this is now the Elko era. I believe in Mike Elko so much that I canceled my plans of voting for either political party's candidate in the upcoming election and will be writing in Mike Elko / Reveille as my presidential and vice presidential picks. And if they do not win, I will dump 1,200 gallons of sweet tea into the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River already is sweet tea, just FYI.
That is a fair point.
While buck naked screaming farmers fight repeatedly. I would also like to acknowledge that Kyle Field is in fact the Lord's Stadium and does not compare to my Cowbell College's Taco Bell caliber stadium. Funny, we can do a lot more with 60,000 than you can do with 109, whatever. Anyway.
That's all script.
Yeah, because going off script about a man's physical physique of Mike Elko was, totally not whatever. Furthermore, the 12th man at Kyle Field is the toughest student section to play in front of and is way more impactful to determining the outcomes of games than Mississippi State's handbell choir of a student section. As a matter of fact, I would like to make the public aware that my college's entire student section converted to being Presbyterian recently, because midway through the fourth quarter, they all became the frozen chosen after seeing their own team piss down their leg while my brother and father began to question the meaning of life after our quarterback attempted to read the field in Braille. I would like to inform everyone that Texas A&M is the real University of Texas, not that sissy school that resides in Austin and wears that resides in Austin and wears a shade of orange that closely resembles baby poop. Thanks, and gig 'em.
I'll take it. Well done. Well done. For the members of Bert's family, before you guys, get pitchforks and come to his house, I would like to say that obviously he did lose a bet, so just call off the dogs. Go ahead.
I would like to say that I made that bet knowing damn well I was going to lose the game. Why? So a lot of people might be asking, it's like, why would you do that if you know you're going to lose the game? It's because a captain goes down with his ship, right? And that's what this is. This is just me going down in a flaming ball of fire. But it's the best looking flaming ball of fire you will ever see. So I rest my case. Am I slightly, humiliated? Yes, but my team's 1-6, so there's more let's be honest, like more humiliation comes from that than what just happened here. So
no, I mean I understand, and quite frankly, I'm what you would call a little bit of a pessimistic Aggie. So when you made that bet, I mean, I was already stressed out going into that game because of the fact that, believe it or not, prior to that game, since joining the SEC in 2012, A&M had only won at Starkville twice.
Well, that's another thing that's interesting.
Really had our number there.
That's another thing interesting too. I know we don't need to dally on this for too long, but ever since A&M joined the conference in 2012, that has been almost a 50-50 matchup. I mean, It was split, I think, going into this game, like almost right down the middle. And it honestly, it showed on the field too. I mean, A&M, a 10-point game to a team that is 1-6 against a team that is now top of the conference.
Yeah, and I think there's just been a lot of stuff that hasn't gone y'all's way because of the fact, how many schools, with the exception of Toledo, that you've played tough. I mean, you guys were really close with Georgia and et cetera, but yes, I was.
What did I say at the beginning of the season? I don't want to talk about Mississippi State football on this podcast.
All right. Well, then moving on. Obviously, we are fresh off of a huge game this weekend. That since we're already on the topic of A&M, we need to cover here, and then we need to get on to the rest of the picture of the madness, and I mean madness that's been the college football 2024-2025 season. Obviously, this is we need to talk about Texas A&M versus LSU. That was a big win for whichever side came out with that. It was going to turn a page in the playoff picture and also in the SEC championship hunt. And it continues to make everyone to scratch their head as to who really does have the best shot as coming out here. So Bert, I want to get your initial thoughts on what you saw in this game. I've got plenty of notes to talk about. Alec, I want to hear from you too. So let me hear from Bert. Let me hear your take on this game first, and then I want to talk about a couple of things that I noted that was interesting. And then Alec, I kind of want you to close on this one. So Bert, go ahead and kick us off here.
So I have a couple takes, and frankly, I'll give you my first take, and then you can kind of loop back to me about some of my other takes. First off, I'll give A&M their props, man. I mean, must-win game in terms of, because you look at the schedule and you have Texas coming up in a couple weeks, and, if you're that 3 losses, I mean, in all honesty, like A&M still can beat Texas, but I think Texas is still a little better. I'd give them the edge at this point. So if A&M was going into that game with 2 losses, I think it would be a lot more different than A&M going in with it now singularly with 1 loss, because now I think you've basically assured yourself you're in the playoff, regardless of what happens with Texas. Just simply because of, and I mean, of course, you're at 10 right now. You're the top 12 get in, but like I said, must-win game. A&M's been known to throw some of these games away. You were down in the game, you come back. Got to give the props where they are deserved. But yeah, that's it for my first round. I'll let everybody else get their general ideas out.
Okay. So Alec, before I let you loose here, let me kind of just go over some of the main points that I noted that just kind of stood out to me when I try to dive with the numbers on this, because you all know me, I like to get technical. Just summary of the game from the offensive perspective. Passing yards for each: Texas A&M 134 versus LSU 405. Rushing yards 242 versus LSU on 23 attempts, mind you, 24 yards. Third down conversions actually went in the favor of LSU. We were Texas A&M was 6 of 14 versus LSU was 8 of 17, so about 4% better there. Not a huge margin, kind of the same there, but slightly in favor there. Honestly, the key of the game here, especially second half, was turnovers for Texas A&M. They had 1 in the first half when Le'Veon Moss fumbled, and that was about Le'Veon Moss's only mistake of the night. LSU had 3, all came in the second half. It was just kind of crazy. And then
bring it back to me on the turnovers.
Got it. Time of possessions was kind of almost dead even, just about 30 minutes for each. A&M had about a minute longer of time of possession, so there wasn't necessarily an offense that just held onto the ball the longest total. I would say the time of possession was very much skewed in each half to where LSU probably had like 2/3 of their time of possession in the first half. A&M the opposite. Bert, let me go ahead and let you loose here.
All right.
And then I'll clean up with some more stats after I let Alec have a whirl with this.
All right. So I gave A&M their props, correct? Would you?
Well, yeah, that and the other 8 minutes that was part of the bet.
Aside
so you
from
can
the
say
first
whatever
8,
you want.
Aside from the first 8 minutes.
Aside from the propaganda, yes, absolutely.
A&M didn't win the game. LSU lost the game. Like, let's be completely honest here. How many field goals did LSU miss that game?
2, but they were also trying to go from 48 yards or longer.
It was 3. It was 3.
Okay, well, either way,
it was 3. So I
just to point out something that kicker.
Are you going to let me? Hey, whoa! This is my moment.
Sorry, you got it.
I just had 8 minutes of that crap, so I get.
I know.
This moment.
Go ahead.
All right. So LSU missed 3 field goals. The point differential at the end of the game was 15 points, right? So you
correct.
Assuming that LSU makes those field goals, that 6 points, 9 points, whatever, right? Now, those 3 turnovers that happened, I'm pretty sure at least 2 of them were like inside the LSU's own red zone.
Correct.
Like inside. So that's another 14 points given up by LSU, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'll give credit where it's due. Is that one of those interceptions that LSU had was the most god awful decision I've ever seen in my entire life. What is rule number 1 for a scrambling quarterback when he's
Never
trying to
throw
leave
over
the
your
pocket?
opposite shoulder.
Never
back to the middle of the
throw
field.
across the middle of the field. And guess what he did? That, and it was a pick.
Yep.
I mean, there were some plays that were just, what are you doing? And sure, give credit to A&M's defense if they're trying to cause that craziness to happen. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that's not a throw that should be made, right? So, 14 points, 21 points, whatever. Another point I'd like to make is, have y'all seen Brian Kelly's latest interview?
Okay. I've heard bits and pieces of it.
Basically,
not a full summary. Go ahead.
he addresses the whole quarterback situation for A&M, and he says they did no preparations for the option at all leading into that game. Not only that, so you're trying to figure out from a defensive perspective, okay, you got a problem, right? You have to stop that option because that's what A&M was running with what's his name? Help me out, Cole.
Marcel Reed.
That's what they were running. It was just straight option. I mean, I remember one play where you had the spy or the quarterback option is sitting there in the opposite C gap where Marcel Reed is running up the A gap. That tells me from a defensive perspective, you aren't game planning for an option at all. And when A&M gets the ball inside the 20-yard line every single time, you're only seeing 4 plays, if that, a drive.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to game plan to that. 4 plays, and then you're off. You're off on the sideline again. Now, I like I said, I'll give A&M that credit. That bomb that Marcel Reed threw, oh my gosh, that might be the prettiest pass I've seen all season. I mean, my Lord.
And it was it was the least expected thing too, because they just scored a touchdown. We've been running the ball all game. The last thing you expect is a deep shot.
Well, it was the first time. It was the first time A&M had the ball on their own 25.
Exactly.
The entire second half. So again, I come back to this whole idea of I give A&M all the credit in the world, but A&M did not win that game. LSU lost it. So sure, going into later on in the season, I think it really sets up well for A&M moving forward. But man, A&M, their schedule is really, really, really easy compared to some of those other conference schedules in the SEC. I don't know how in the world they got away with only having to play Texas, where teams like Georgia are going to have to play Tennessee, Texas, and Alabama. Mississippi State has to go play Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and the best team on Texas A&M's schedule in conference is Texas, and right behind them is LSU. I don't know how A&M got away with that easy of a schedule, and now you're seeing it play out. You're seeing it play. That's the reason why they're number 1 in the conference right now, because the teams they've played in conference suck, are middle of the pack at best. Arkansas, LSU looked terrible against USC. I'll give A&M credit. I think they'll finish the season, I think, with 2 losses. But man, it really irks you when you hang your hat on a conference as being having a tough schedule, and yet you have A&M sitting there at 10-2 with just. I mean, sure. At the beginning of the season, you still had Missouri on that schedule, correct?
Correct. And when we played, they were top 10. And I will say, Missouri's tanked. Missouri's tanked. But that's also come with some injuries.
Missouri is not a top 10 team. And everybody saw them sitting there at the beginning of the season and was saying they are a joke. Why is that team anywhere near the top 10? And yet A&M, when they beat Missouri the way they did, a couple weeks ago, I mean, they are sitting there puffing their chest like they are King Kong. And yet I don't see, other than this LSU game, I don't see something A&M can say that's a signature win for us.
We definitely won't right now, but let me ask
If
the
you
question
be,
to
like I
Alex.
said, if you be, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No. Finish up what you're saying, and then we
No,
can transition.
I was going to say all of this is trumped if y'all beat Texas, but
yeah. Well, so before I kind of bring up some points that kind of maybe would muddy the waters a little bit, just on your initial deal here with this, looking at both teams, Alec, do you think LSU will win out the season? Number one, and well, let me do this in reverse order. Number one, do you think Missouri, along with the fact that they really completely started to fall apart when playing us? But number two, do you think that they're starting to fall off even further, especially how they did against Alabama, where their quarterback, Brady Cook, was already hurt going into that game and came out in the first half? Do you think that kind of has further tanked them to where they get shut out, 34-0 against Alabama, and they're just going to further tank? Where do you look at the validity of where Missouri sits right now, or really that win for A&M? And number two, where do you feel like LSU is going to go? Do you think this is a team that can bounce back and knock out Alabama in what's basically an elimination game going into next week?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak too much on Missouri. The only game I saw was against A&M, and like you said, it was kind of one-sided. But for LSU, I think, man, you take a tough loss at Kyle Field. I mean, a couple of things I took away from it was Mo Bamba and the white towels. Like, imagine in college football 25 playing there is like, I mean, your your stadium is just, I mean, it's tough to play there. Now, if that game's at home, does that change anything for LSU? Maybe not. I mean, I make the same argument with Ohio State, Oregon. But I think, A&M played a good game. They look great on defense. And then, I mean, they had the ball in prime position more times than LSU did, I think. And then with the option to LSU just, I think they need time to make up a plan, think of a game plan, and who knows, really. I think, I saw it with Ohio State, Nebraska. Nebraska gets blown out the week before, and they kind of sit there in silence and, really study and work hard to not show that same face again. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think LSU just really needs to settle down and stick with they do somewhat well some years, and that's winning. But I'm not confident they make it to even the last six. Even I think they're out first round of the playoffs, but I don't know. It also depends who they play. I mean, they can. Yeah, it's tough to call it how I see it right now, because I haven't seen that. If that's the worst of LSU, then it's really not. I mean, it's not good, but it's really not that bad. Now, is that going to win you a natty? No, but
so I'm just getting a look at LSU's remaining schedule. Next week they have Alabama, of course.
That's an elimination game.
Which is an elimination game, but they have some tricky games coming down the schedule. Never thought I'd say this, but Vandy might be an interesting one for them.
Ooh, yeah.
And then you have Florida, which I don't think LSU will have problems with that one, but behind Vandy would be Oklahoma, and I don't see any problems they would have against Oklahoma. But it really boils down to that Alabama game. If LSU finds a way to beat Bama, I mean, they'd be sitting there at 10-2. You think they are? I mean, I think they would still be in the conversation at that point.
They would be in the playoff if they went out, in my opinion. So let me, Bert, you made some very interesting points, and I think there's a lot of validity to them. So this argument isn't necessarily taking away all of that. I think both sides can be true, that A&M did things to win the game and LSU did things to lose the game. So let me kind of break this down here. I think I have to kind of highlight some of the struggles A&M had in the first half that kind of make the Marcel Reed factor more explainable, like, just make a little more sense. So when I looked at A&M's offense in the first half, yes, Connor Wigman missed 2 throws that were really, really bad, just sailed them. It makes me wonder more and more how much of a problem that AC joint issue he's been dealing with since Notre Dame, when he hurt it in the middle of that game, has been a factor as he's taken more hits after coming back from Missouri. He looked great against Missouri, but he took some hits against Mississippi State. Y'all got pressure on him. Y'all got him on the ground. And that's when I started to notice him be a little bit less consistent. So I'm interested to see with whatever playing time he gets going forward, whether Marcel's a starter, he's back up, or vice versa, what kind of level of consistency we get from him. But in regards to where LSU was winning on the defensive side of the ball, they absolutely game planned for a one-dimensional, as far as options, running game that was out of the gun, using a lot of H-back guard combos in regards to pulling and some zone schemes, stuff like that, a couple traps. But they game plan for only one dimension of the run in regards to just, Le'Veon Moss doing the Marshawn Lynch special. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I'm not saying it here. But here's the thing. It's not just that they were stopping the run. They were doing it with a lot of times only 6 in the box. And I say that sometimes they would roll a guy down last minute and give you effectively 7 in the box for a moment, and they pull somebody. Essentially, when you're able to stop the run with a light box, and then it makes it that easier to get away with dropping 7 in coverage, and then you combine that with the fact that they were getting pressure on Wigman with rushing 4. They did also have some blitzes, but the most I saw them ever send was 6 in the first half, and they got a sack with rushing 4. They continuously eliminated also a mobile pocket from Wigman, so he didn't scramble a lot. They did a good job of keeping him in the pocket. They really just had a perfect game plan for an offense that wasn't able to capitalize on LSU sometimes only having 6 in the box and trying to stop the run game with that. When you're in this formation or this kind of a play calling scheme that Colin Klein puts together, to where you're a run heavy offense, but you're doing all this out of the gun, and you're not necessarily crowding with double tight ends all the time. So a lot of times you're trying to get used to having success when you are not able to put every hat on a hat. On the situations where you get a hat on a hat and you only got 6 guys in the box, and you're able to match for blockers man to man, you've got to be getting at least 3 yards per carry on that. Otherwise, you'll see exactly what happens. So that was the first problem I had with it. Second part, Wigman was missing reads as well in the passing game. He had happy feet, but along with that, there was, watching some more film, there was some wide open throws that he just did not pick up, whether that was from duress or whatever. I think he still has some more. He's got some mental issues in regards to reading the field he's working with. So, in my opinion, yes, the receivers also struggled to get separation a lot. There was a lot of times where he was running for his life and looked down the field, had no options because of the fact LSU was once again able to just get pressure with 4 and drop 7. It's the best luxury you can ever have as a defense. Now, looking into the Marcel Reed factor, yes, Bert, you and Brian Kelly bring up a great point in regards to LSU got caught with their pants down when the Marcel Reed factor was brought in, and you're introducing multiple runners. But mind you, if you go back and watch the film, they're sparse, but there's a couple of plays that A&M actually did introduce multiple runners by doing some motions and stuff like that, some jet sweeps, and LSU struggled with that too.
I will give you some props for that point right there. I mean, I was blown away at the outside speed A&M has. I mean, my gosh. I mean, the ball is snapped and the guy's already 20 yards from where the ball, outside. I mean, it at a certain point, I mean, it turned into just a complete track meet, and LSU was just left in the dust.
Well, and the main thing that you're seeing here is if you look at some of those plays in the first half where Wigman's still at quarterback, but with motion men and other stuff, adding wide receivers as a possible option, not a read option, but just 2 options for where a run play could go. They struggle with that too. We didn't do that much because you have to use receivers in motion for that. So it's going to be a gimmick at some point. They're going to sniff it out.
Well, with Marcel Reed at the quarterback at that position, it opens up more possibilities. You actually have to honor, a quarterback being able to run down the field. No offense to Connor Wegman, but from a defensive perspective, if Connor Wegman wants to run the football, go ahead. I'll take that. But when with Marcel Reed, that's a whole different situation.
Yeah, and I think the difference is Wegman can run when he wants to, and he is a decent athlete. But the difference is when he pulls the ball, the main thing is, he's not necessarily slow. I'd say he's about a 4.6 guy. But what we saw as a common theme, and I think this is my main point in regards to why I kind of dismantled just the whole point of Brian Kelly saying we were just unprepared for Marcel Reed, is any time that they had multiple options for runners on run plays. And like I said, there's evidence of this before Marcel Reed comes in. It's sparse, but there's a couple plays where you start to see this. Go back at the film and look how many times you see two LSU defenders on one option, chasing after the same guy when they should be split up. You're going to see this when you look back at the Marcel Reed film, like I have, and you're going to see multiple times, especially with Marcel Reed. But like I said, there's evidence of this being a problem earlier in the game of basic read options to where you have multiple LSU defenders going after one guy. And yes, it's unprepared, but like I said, the only thing I have against that is what's the number one thing that every defense has to be prepared for ever since the evolution of the spread offense, that every high school defense, like basic read option out of a shotgun. What did A&M do? Like if we came out there and we ran freaking Army triple option like it's the 1920s and we caught them off guard with that, like, look, I would say Brian Kelly and your point, Bert, is absolutely true. That in that case, LSU got caught with their pants down and they couldn't handle the crazy thing here. The difference is, I would say, when you're running read option with Connor Wegman, if you have that instance where actually two guys go off the same guy, you have a little more like reaction time to correct it within that yard or two before he gets past your wave of linebackers. Whereas with Marcel Reed, because of the fact that he's more, it looks like more of a 4-4, 4-3 guy, but just also his way to mask the ball in the read option and pull it, and then just his overall speed, agility, etc. He gives you less time to go, oh crap, we're not playing this right.
Yeah.
So that's what
he'll exploit your mistakes more so on the option than Connor West would. Absolutely.
But at the same time, like I said, this was the basic read option. And I think the main thing was we saw Marcel Reed completed less passes to A&M players than Nussman did, if you think about it.
Yeah.
2 versus 3. But what did we see the times he did throw? Well, one of them was a check down, but it was wide open to Le'Veon Moss. The second one was an absolute bomb. But finally, we saw the safeties have to come down a little bit because of the threat of the run game. So you had one less backer in coverage too. So a couple of other things here. LSU was one-dimensional on offense. I think we also have to talk about the fact that A&M completely had fantastic adjustments for the second half. You looked at what their problems were in the first half.
I can say A&M defensively. I mean, you guys have hung your hat on the defensive front all season long. And rightfully so. I mean, when you have guys like the guys I mentioned in my opening, I mean, come on. I mean, you can't run on that. I don't care if you have 6 guys blocking for you.
Yeah.
So
look, here's
LSU
where
was forced to do that.
Yeah, but LSU also has become a little bit more one-dimensional as the season's progressed. But the stats here kind of show it: 405 passing yards, but they only got 24 rushing yards on 23 attempts. But my main thing is here: LSU was getting so much yards after catch because A&M was playing their corners 7 yards off the ball to try not to give up the big play. And Elko finally saw that by the conclusion of the first half, and he in his post-game press conference said the biggest adjustment we did was we rolled up the coverage. And dared them to complete the deep balls. And look, you look at that drive in the early fourth quarter, they got them a couple times, but at least you weren't giving up freaking 3-yard slants for 25 yards after the catch. And that was the main thing was, when you take away that element, now Nussmeier has to sit back there in the pocket a little more. You're able to have more time to get pressure. That was a big thing, was they completely eliminated A&M's defensive line and blitzes in the first half by getting the ball out quickly. Look at how many of those completions were for 10 yards or less and then taken down the field with yards after catch because they were picking it apart. Nussmeier did a fantastic job of delivering the football and making the right decision quickly. So, like I said, that element was taken out. The coverages were mixed. You made a fantastic point as to Nussmeier never should have thrown that ball on that first interception. Never should have. Even cardinal sin, but that was caused by him being forced out of the pocket to the weak side of his throwing arm, and that doesn't happen without him being under duress, and that was the key difference between the second half and the first half in regards to the Aggie defense. The quarterback's under duress, number one, and number two, the coverage rolled up. The coverage also was rapidly changing. The other two interceptions was simply Nussmeier thinking one thing in regards to coverage and the defense being the other. You look especially that third one by the same guy. He thinks that dude is going to go. He thinks he's manned up, and he's actually zoned to the flats. So he transitions receivers at the perfect time to jump to that route. So yes, LSU did some things to lose the game, but also I would say, especially on the defensive side of the ball, A&M did plenty of things to put themselves back in the game. And in regards to like this whole, like Brian Kelly saying, well, we just were not prepared at all for Marcel Reed. Brother, in this day and age to where RPOs are a thing, which that's way more complicated than anything LSU saw. There's no team in this nation that should not be prepared for the read option. And I mean, anyone going against Army, okay, or maybe like rest in peace, Mike Leach offense, then maybe maybe you're not going to be as worried about a read option run game. With Army, you'd be more worried about a triple option, which is even worse. But like in the modern era, to where the spread offense, any stuff out of the gun has become the primary offensive formation, like you've got to be ready for a basic read option. That's all you saw.
You made your point right there with talking about multiple players going after the same read. I mean, there's your point right there. I mean, it shows that what he said in that press conference was true, right? It's simply, and we'll go into whether we won't go into where that blame should be put on. Frankly, it should be put on Brian Kelly himself. But I mean, the next question, just from a moving forward perspective, now people know it's coming. South Carolina knows what to look out for. If you don't have an option plan for A&M and Marcel Reed, I mean, it's coming. Like what else?
The last point I want to make, and then I'll shut up about positives in regards to Tamu about this, and then I want Alex kind of final word on what he thinks is more. I think it's really straight down the middle here, but I kind of want to get his opinion on this because he's the most neutral between the two of us. The last thing I'll make that was the biggest difference offensively with that run game, because like I said, LSU shut it down in the first half. There was phenomenal, and if you go back and watch the film, you will agree with me. Go watch it in detail. Go watch number 84, number 17, Trey Watson and Theo Orstrom's. A&M's tight ends, whether in an H-back position, a tight end position, or in some cases in the slot, did a phenomenal job in the run blocking scheme. And they really helped up for the fact that A&M's offensive line was losing man-on-man blocking assignments. Really did a fantastic job. I mean, really two of the touchdowns we scored were solely because of them opening up some holes. Or being fantastic lead blockers. They really did there was a phenomenal difference in regards to how well they blocked in the first half versus the second half, and they are really an extra element. Those blockers with those extra men that you see, whether in a fullback, A-back, H-back, tight end position, that is such a key component of Colin Klein's offense if you look into it more and more. And that was another unsung hero of the night. Okay, so moving on from breaking that down, I could talk about that game forever at this point because there's so much to pick apart here. But Alec, so we can put a bow on this and move on. As our third-party consultant here, what do you think is more likely here, that A&M won the game or LSU lost it?
Man, I think LSU lost it. I think all the turnovers, the third down conversions, the not scoring in the red zone, that's how you lose football games. I mean, it's to me, that's pretty cut and dry. Yes, A&M looked good. They had good play. I mean, but LSU couldn't cover the option. I mean, it even just with the points you've made, it even sounds like you're saying that LSU lost the game.
Well, I would say with the read option specifically, it's like, yes, you being unprepared for that is one of the reasons why A&M was able to score so quickly when they got the ball in the red zone. But at the same time, one, that shouldn't be an excuse. That's like saying, hey, I failed my math test because I didn't brush up on my kindergarten mathematic ability. That's such a basic concept for the modern era of football. So it's like, yes, that can be valid, But in what world is it okay for a 2024 era of college football defense to not be ready for a basic shotgun read option with 2 options, right? Like that's just.
I mean, Cole, you have to admit the option under Marcel Reed is a lot different than the option under Connor Wegman.
Sure, but think of other people LSU's going to have to face. Florida can do the same thing with their mobile quarterback.
I understand.
Not to the same extent, but
I understand that, right? But if you're going in with this preconceived notion that the option is a threat, you're going to prepare for that more. If you go in thinking that Connor Wegman is going to be the quarterback, that offense looks a lot different under Wegman rather than Marcel Reed. You're going to play to that. You're going to game plan towards that offense as opposed to a Marcel Reed offense. And that's what my comment from earlier was saying. It's like now teams know he's coming. I mean, there is no excuse at this point, and you're going to figure out a lot more about A&M now, I think, more so than you have on the first half of the season. Because now, like I said, and again, from a college football playoff perspective and from a, getting hot at the right time momentum, I think it really shapes up well for A&M because, I mean, if you think about it, I was looking at their schedule now. It's like you have South Carolina, Auburn, and Texas. I think you're going to be favored in 2 of those games. If I'm not, there has to be one more game. But regardless, I look at A&M's schedule and I say, it looks well for you guys.
South Carolina is the one that I'm worried about. That team should have beaten LSU if it weren't for a bad call and some of their own mistakes, and then really had a shot against Bama. There's some people argue they really should have pulled that one off too.
I think we're going to find out a lot about A&M over these next couple of weeks.
For sure.
If you guys are a legitimate contender, you will mop the floor with South Carolina just like you did in the second half against LSU. And if South Carolina adjusts to Marcel Reed because of what they've seen on film from this game, we might be talking about the same old Texas A&M Aggies.
Well, and I think the key for A&M is to whatever you feel like in the game the defense is prepared for, do the opposite. And I think you may see more of a very easily callable switch between who's running the offense for Mike Elko. He hasn't been afraid to do it, and that won him that game. The last point I'll make, and then I'm going to shut up about this, and we're going to move on to other things that happened. I think a good middle ground for this is that LSU's defense lost the game, but A&M's defense definitely won the game on their side too. Because you think about those missed field goals. That was a great point you brought up, right? A couple interesting things to think about. 2 of those 3 field goals were on, basically a 48-yard field goal. That kicker's longest he's ever hit is 48 yards. So let's just say he makes, half of those, right? It's still a reachable game. And I think the other one was maybe 45 or 42. They never took a field goal inside of the 30-yard line or 35-yard line. So A&M's defense did buckle down at the right points to at least make it to where LSU was not waltzing in the end zone.
In today's age of college football, if you are going for a field goal, I'm assuming you think you could make it from that distance.
Sure, because the fact of the matter, like I said, it's still probabilities here, right?
Given how many people go for it on 4th down nowadays.
Look, but Lane Kiffin is massively skewing the statistics on that one. But yes, you make a good point. I'm just saying A&M's defense did a lot in regards to the turnovers aspect and in regards to buckling down at the right time to keep that game in reach, and 2, massively swing the outcome of that one. And it wasn't just luck. Elko made some brilliant adjustments. So I think it really is more towards the middle, but I think you have a good point, and it probably slightly leans towards LSU making some critical mistakes.
It's funny you mentioned the whole idea where one has to be true and the other one doesn't. Both of these things can be true at the same time.
Oh, that's actually more what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I thought Elko, from a coaching perspective, phenomenal job. I've never seen A&M make adjustments like that at halftime, ever.
Yeah, no. One of the funniest things I saw.
It's a tremendous. I will say this from a fellow SEC perspective. It is really scary, the idea that A&M now has a coach.
Yeah, and one of the funniest tweets I saw is, if you're not familiar, A&M's campus police has a Twitter account, and for whatever reason, they will announce every single arrest that they make during the game. And
I've seen
somebody
it.
was
Yeah.
arrested for cocaine possession, and
Phenomenal.
somebody quoted that tweet and said, "Who needs
Phenomenal.
cocaine when you have Mike Elko second half adjustments?" Like, it really that is the question at this point.
All right.
But yeah, let's move on here.
Move on real quick.
Yep, let's move on here. Bert, whenever you get close to when you need to hop off, just let us know and hop off. We may have to keep this running because we can't just talk about one game. So I know you're getting close to your time limit here.
That's fine. I can go 15 more minutes.
I bet. All right, Alec, let's talk about the Big Ten a little bit, right?
Let's do it.
Some other stuff to recap this weekend. Ohio State, Oregon, those are some of the big teams coming out of here. Ohio State, a little bit narrow in regards to that Nebraska win. Where do you think they're going to end up with this? Do you see them reappearing in the Big Ten championship game? Are you worried at all for that performance, considering the ups and downs of Nebraska? Or, this is a team that literally was like seconds away from either tying or taking the lead against Oregon in what was one of the games of the year. Do you think that this is just Nebraska starting to play up, or where do you think Ohio State sits with this? And then also, what are your thoughts on Oregon with the way they're playing lights out right now?
So first point, I think we played down. Now, I'm not talking that low on Nebraska. I think, like the point I made earlier, they had gotten stomped and they had something to prove. And then they're going against a top 5 team. That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly who you want to prove against. Ohio State's offensive line, 1 is hurt, and 2 is just getting beat. I mean, they're Urban Meyer said it best. I mean, you got to have just the fight, the will, and just be a monster. And these guys, it almost looks, at least in that game, looked like it was just a scrimmage against our Scarlet team, and it was just practice. Or if you have a black stripe on your helmet, you're over here. If you don't, then that's what it felt like as a fan watching it. Was these guys didn't go out ready to play at their level. No knock on Dylan Raiola or Nebraska. I mean, I think they're a good team, and really, I think it was we played down and they played up, and it almost bit us in the ass. I still think these guys look good. I mean, you have the number 1 recruited wide receiver in the nation. Just get him the ball. Just get Jeremiah Smith the ball. Will Howard just needs to throw it up. We've seen him make one-handed grabs contested with a face mask. I mean, I think I'm not too confident in Will Howard. Not like I was CJ Stroud. But I think if he gets the ball close to these guys, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, I mean, these guys can catch the ball.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair point. And I think the Big Ten could be one of those conferences that ends up having a lot of parity. Look, SEC, I think, has the absolute most parity going on right now. I don't know if it's touchable, but I think the Big Ten can end up being pretty close behind them when you have, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to the closing games of the regular season for this conference, it's going to be very, very interesting here. If Michigan was worth a crap, that would make it amazing too, but they're not.
I was about to make the point. Let's say for what I really look at Ohio State's schedule, and really the only big X I have on their schedule right now is Penn State. And assuming they get through that game, I mean, you get to the Big Ten championship game, and you're probably going to be sitting there against Oregon. And so, we talk about parity. You really want to boil down to it. Ohio State still has every opportunity to win the Big Ten and go in as a top 4 team to the college football playoff.
Yeah, so, 100%.
Yeah, we did. Definitely needs to win out here, I think. At least. Yeah. I mean, Ohio State cannot lose to Michigan. Not again. I can't do it. My uncle can't do it. My family can't do it. We can't do this again.
I don't think you're going to have to worry about that one.
But we got to win out because, I mean, we've got really the next 2 big games, Penn State and then Michigan. I mean, they're not – it's big for us because we're Buckeyes.
Yeah,
but
they may play it all close just out of hatred like
Yeah.
many people do.
They're going to will themselves.
Rivalry games. You never know how they're going to go.
Yeah.
No,
Given that we get
absolutely.
through those two, man, like you said, I think we're in complete control. Now, to the Big Ten championship. I think Oregon, Ohio State is going to be another great game. I think one play is different in their first matchup. The game is completely different.
That game was at Oregon. That game was at Oregon, correct?
Yeah. It was in
Now
Oregon. You play that game at the Shoe.
You're at a
play that game now. Right. I feel like you play that game anywhere else or one different play, the outcome of that game's different. But that's good football. That's football I like watching.
Yeah, exactly. And like I touched on earlier, like you talk about parity, it's really, really awesome when you have your two best conferences just without a clear. I mean, obviously Oregon looks to be that way, but with how close that Ohio State game was and how good Penn State's starting to look, man, are we in for some late season parity with these guys? I think between those three. But the SEC is just going crazy because you've got like 4 teams that can't make their mind up of whether they're going to have a good day or a bad day.
Try again, man.
5.
No,
6,
I mean,
who knows?
you want to talk about teams like at the top of the conference with like 1 or 2 losses, 0 losses. I mean, Tennessee, Georgia.
Oh,
Texas,
I was talking about the mid teams.
A&M,
I was talking about the
LSU.
Battle of Midway over here, like Arkansas, Kentucky, Florida, Vandy.
Again, it goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of the episode. Mississippi State is easily the worst team in the conference, and they only lost to A&M, who's the top team in the conference, standing-wise, by 10 points.
Well, same with Georgia.
Exactly.
Y'all lost by same margin in Georgia. It's just a crazy conference, and I think it does. I think all the parity we see in both of these leagues or conferences, rather, kind of shows how we've actually had a little bit of like equalization in this new era of college football. But also the fact that like even like this is already the case with the SEC for the most part, but I think it's gotten even higher in regards to the standard of just like there is no easy game on the schedule now at all. At the point where Vandy is having parades downtown, like with happy faces on, and it's not somebody else's fans just going out for a bachelorette party, bro. I mean, the league is getting close. But one yet, A&M, like you mentioned, Bert, has a lot of games that we could be looking back when the season is over and saying, man, maybe they did have a good strength of record, or they could go back and be like, you know what, like they really did have a easier route than other teams did, where they didn't have to go and go into some dogfights like what Tennessee and Alabama and LSU have had to do. But dang, there's just a lot more question marks across the board here. And then, like you said, Bert, with the top 4 between Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, and A&M, man, there's just so much. I mean, you want to talk about parity, that is parity central.
You didn't mention Texas or Georgia in that either.
I mean, yeah, Texas and Georgia, unfortunately. Well, I mean, only unfortunately to one of those, and you know which one. And you want to talk about drop-offs too. This is one of the questions I want to close out with 2 things, but these are the 2 questions I want to close out with, or the main question I want to close out with. Number 1, who do you think is having the more disappointing season right now on a national standpoint with their expectations going in? Oklahoma State, having what was presumed to be the best running game, in regards to Ollie Gordon.
Don't tease me.
Being absolutely terrible. Or Ole Miss, a.k.a. Frat Boy University, a.k.a. Twitter Fingers coach, a.k.a. Guy who loves his players to fake injuries nowadays. But anywho, obviously I'm trying to not hide my bias here, but like I think this could go either way. From Alec, I'm going to start with you so Bert can just kind of, rile himself up a little bit more. Look, Oklahoma just lost to, who was it? Who they get blown out by? Or not blown out by? Was it Utah? I forget. Was it Tech? TCU? No, I forget. Oklahoma just dropped another game here. Oklahoma State, rather. Heck, they're 0-5 in the Big 12 now. And this was one of the teams that we talked about preseason having a shot at winning the conference title between them, Kansas, and Utah. So do you think that that's more surprising, that they're literally at the rock bottom of the conference they were expected to dominate? Or do you think that Ole Miss not being at the top, considering all the moves they made at the transfer portal and how hyped they were after last season, is more of the letdown here?
I'm going to pass it on to Bert. I think he's steamed enough.
Okay. All right.
See what he has to
Oh,
say.
don't tempt me with a good time. Of course it's Ole Miss. They were a top 5 team in the country.
Bert, all I'm going to say is you're welcome for this one.
You want to talk about, like everybody was saying, national championship contenders, and, Lane has spent who knows how money on the NIL. It's all boiling up to this season just to go off and lose to Kentucky. And that wasn't it, right? And with the 12-team playoff, you still had every opportunity to go in and make your little game, but then you go off and you lose to LSU.
And giving up a massive comeback too. You had it won.
Exactly. And here's the crazy part too, though. It's like, I'd have to look at the remainder of their schedule, but like I could easily see, like, given that scope, like just given how our rivalry games go with those guys, like it wouldn't surprise me at all if they drop the game to State. And I get
you
we're
kind
1-6.
of put the words in my mouth there. Yeah,
we're 1-6, right? And that's. But you want to, like I said, we talked about how State was doing, against Texas and Georgia and A&M. If Ole Miss is, let's look at their schedule real quick. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah. There's no way Ole Miss is done. They got to go play Georgia at Georgia. Yep. That's not going to happen. Have fun. Your season's going to be over. You'll still make a bowl game, but that's not going to happen. And then, again, there was a joke being made on Barstool, basically talking about how Lane Kiffin has already checked out to the Florida job, right? And let's be honest, he probably is. At this point, I don't think you're going to beat Georgia and a 3-loss SEC school. I don't care who you are, is probably out. So I think Ole Miss, I love to sit, as a State fan, I love to sit back and watch, the tower fall. I don't see Ole Miss. I kind of see them slipping back into irrelevancy, frankly.
Yeah.
The SEC middle irrelevancy.
Do you think,
Alec, do you have anything to add to that? What do you think?
Besides to Georgia, do you think Ole Miss wins out? They wouldn't win out because they'd lose to Georgia. But
if I was a gambling man, I'd say they'd win out, and I think they'll lose to Georgia, and I think they'll beat Florida, then they'll beat State. Now, granted, it is the Egg Bowl. Who knows what's going to happen? I've been on the sideline for crazy stuff in that game, but I don't see. Frankly, I just don't see Ole Miss. Everybody thought they were a national championship contender, and now they're not even going to make the college football playoff. And in all likelihood, Lane's probably going to leave for another job because, after this season and after everything he did in the transfer portal, it's been proven, you have such a tremendous run in the transfer portal and all these recruits are coming in just for you to lose 3 games and you're not even in the top 12.
Yeah.
I
agreed.
And frankly, I think it's easier to get people to go to Florida than it is to get them to go to Oxford.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just how
last
recruiting
question
works.
here, guys. Last question, then we're wrapping this up. One of the crazy topics going on here is the fact that Colorado continues to climb the standings in the Big 12 when they were projected to be at the bottom 4 of the Big 12, and now they're sitting at the top 4. And you look at their schedule, the main games they have left to play that are important. We thought it was going to be Utah, where actually Utah's freaking 1-4 in the Big 12 right now. And man, it's actually going to be more like Texas Tech is kind of like their biggest challenge going through. They made it through Cincinnati pretty much unscathed, no problems there. There's a good chance when you basically have Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Utah left to play that they could win this sucker out and maybe punch a bid if Iowa State drops a game to someone that they've beaten into the conference championship, or really for their expectations. They're already bowling for the first time since 2016, But if they go to a meaningful bowl with a 9, heaven forbid, 10-win season here, man, you want to talk about a coach of the year candidate here? That's considering this team had 2 wins 2 years ago. That is a crazy turnaround. But what are y'all's thoughts in regards to the way the Big 12 in general is playing out when you have all this parity? Like the teams that we picked to win this conference, there was 3 that we kind of went around between you, me, Thomas, and I think Karsten, which was Kansas State, Utah, and Oklahoma State. Only one of those 3 is even a factor into the conference championship, possibility here. And that's if BYU or Iowa State drop a game. So what are y'all's thoughts on this whole situation, whether you want to focus on Colorado or you just want to focus on just the craziness of, the BYU Iowa State runs going on, or just people just not performing as well? What are y'all's thoughts here?
I would say let's stick with the thing, just parity. Just the Big 12. I mean, everybody kind of knew coming into this season that this was the one conference where there was no one team that everybody could just point to and say this is a team. And I'll give credit where it's due with Colorado. I mean, the talent at Colorado. I mean, from Shedeur and Travis Hunter. I mean that's as it can compete with anybody in the country. And so now, yeah. I mean, you're starting to see a lot of the talent conglomerate and or coagulate. First time using that word on this podcast.
Not SAT words over here, brother.
Yeah. Coagulate. And really, like I said, you're seeing a lot of talent coagulate in the Big Ten and the SEC. And it really, that conference has turned into, whoever wants it, take it. And I mean, that's what it shows with the teams we picked being at the bottom of the conference now. And I'm curious. I looked at Colorado's like some of the previous scores that they've had against some of those other competition. Like that's one thing that's interesting too. Like that Nebraska game against Colorado. I mean, Nebraska completely owned them. Yeah. And now we're talking about Colorado. Now we're talking about Colorado going off and winning the Big 12. I mean, just from and we talk like those out of conference games really matter when it comes to like an end of the season picture, because a game like that, I mean, sure, Nebraska, just lost to Ohio State by the narrowest of margins, right? But, you start factoring in, okay, Colorado went and still got, I mean, Nebraska is nowhere near the top of the Big Ten, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. We think of the top Big Ten teams. We think of Oregon, Washington, Michigan. Penn State. Those are the top teams in this conference. Nebraska is seen to be one of the weaker teams in that conference, and yet they're going off and completely obliterating a team in the Big 12. Like a team at the top of the Big 12. I mean, I look at that and I have to say it's like, just from a general college football perspective, like I don't see how that's sustainable, right? When you have a team like, let's say Colorado goes off and makes a college football playoff and then just gets completely obliterated by either an SEC school or Big 12 school. I mean, that I hate to be that guy that says these conferences. I mean, like they're. It's good football, right? It's close games. The conference is just crazy. It's just there's such a huge talent drop off and such a difference in the levels of teams between these conferences.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say that Nebraska game has it doesn't have an asterisk on it, but for me, I look at that as Colorado really has turned some pages between now and then. And the main aspects you have to look at is look at their rushing yards they're starting to get. They've had a couple games they've gone for 100 yards rushing or more, and for their first 3 games, their rushing game was nothing, and I mean nothing. Essentially, if they were having any problems executing very complex air raid styles like a Mike Leach kind of offense, if a team was able to handle any of that, there was no rushing element to develop consistency and to have the chains move consistently. It was so much reliant on big plays from the skill possession players. And the other thing you got to look at with Colorado, and this was something we saw from the start. You look at the Nebraska game; I think they only allowed I think they shut them out the second half, or they allowed very, very little points once they made some halftime adjustments. The hire of Warren Sapp as the defensive coordinator for this team has got to be looked at as one of the best assistant coach hires or coordinator hires rather of the offseason, because this is a team that made offenses in the Pac-12 look like they were running on air last year, to the point where they blew double-digit leads within like 5 minutes of time on the clock. And you're not seeing that anymore. You're seeing a defense that can have really, really good impactful plays, but also just be consistent. A lot of great adjustments from them, but also I think defense and rushing game is the two you look at. Rushing game is something you've seen develop over the season. The defense has been the biggest change you've seen since I would say game 2. Game 1, they had some issues early on. But their rushing game through their offensive line, making some changes, has finally been an element that's existed since Dion has got there. I think it's the biggest change there. But to close this, Alec, who's your pick to win the Big 12 at this point? Because that's, even though we know where this conference sits in regards to the Power Four, this is going to be a determining factor in the playoff for certain. I think at the max we get 2 teams for this conference. I think it could just be 1 depending on the parity. Look, who's your pick here? I think the 4 you're looking at is BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado. Like, what do you look? I mean, if you had to put a pin on it right now, what would you pick and why?
AP on my wrist, perfect timing. I'm going with Colorado, man. I mean, the Nebraska loss is tough. Nebraska's, I think, 10th in the Big Ten right now. So it is a tough loss, but like you said, man, they've come around. I've just watched some highlights on Instagram. I mean, Travis Hunter, Shador. I mean, they're kind of coming together, and they actually look like a solid team. Given they win out, they have to win out.
And then he's going to drop a game.
Right. Like Iowa State.
Iowa State's got to drop a game, and then I think maybe Kansas State's got to drop a game. They win.
Kansas State has the tiebreaker against Colorado.
So you really need Kansas State to drop a game too.
But just from an outsider, like just looking at Kansas State's schedule, they still have a lot of really good conference teams to play.
Yeah, and that game with them in Colorado was so close, dude. Like Colorado had that game won for a second.
I will be completely honest. I think it's going to come down to Kansas State and Iowa State. They still have to play.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
They still have to play, so one of those schools is going to get a loss, and then basically I think Kansas State or Iowa State is going to have to lose twice, and I don't see both of those schools losing twice.
It's going to be interesting to see. We'll have to see how it plays out, but yeah, a lot of parity. It's been an absolutely wild college football season, to say the least, and I don't think it's coming anywhere near to a stop in regards to the parity that we've seen here, guys. So, gentlemen,
it's only going to
thank
get
you all
more
for hopping on as
stretch.
usual. Yeah, down the stretch is going to be crazy, but guys, thank you guys for hopping on, and we'll get back on this as soon as we can. We know we had a big gap from our last episode on here. We've been traveling. I had to go down. Me and Burr had to go down to Starkville 2 weeks ago. Alec has been just tearing it up on rhythm sections on the weekends. He's got a job to do over there. Okay. And that's to be our expert test rider for the Motorsports podcast. So, we're trying to give people what they want. Okay. It's harder than you think it is. But anywho, hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Alec, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Of course. You'll be on here very, very soon. Once again, Bert, I will make personal phone calls to your extended relatives.
Enjoy me wearing this, because it's never happening again.
Yeah, I know. But if you hear knocks at your front door, it's not the FBI. That is your extended family from Mississippi. So just watch out. I'm going to try to get the phone calls off and tell them to call the dogs. But, we got some time between now and then. I can only call so many people at one time. You never know what's going to happen.
I'm planning my revenge for next year.
Okay, well, I'll have some more worried about. But at least the travel to get my heart broken won't be as long. So there's that. Anywho, thank you guys for hopping on. Thank you guys for listening. Those of you that tuned in, always, let us know some stuff in the comments of what you want to hear us talk about. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.